Our next speaker is Arturo Gomez, who got his veterinary degree from the University of Santiago, and he's currently studying a PhD in epidemiology at the University of Wisconsin. So he's going to be focusing very much on digital dermatitis. Okay, so Gomez, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Lay back if you want. Don't snore because it's very noisy. and we'll talk about a little bit of digital dermatitis. So I will put some more than R squares, but it's because I'm a PhD student, so we are totally loaded with those things. Okay. So Warwick and Richard taught me, okay, you can divide your talk in two. The first thing that you can do is just talk about digital dermatitis and present what it is, and then the next day you can present how to control it. So it's maybe not that fun for some of you because you want action today, but I think that you really need to do that. So don't miss tomorrow's talk if you stay here until the end of my talk today, okay? Because you are gonna be lame in one leg, and this is about lameness, okay? Okay, so we are a group in Wisconsin, and we deal with lameness in general. But Dorte Dopper is my boss. Here is a German origin, working in Netherlands for a little while, and she will probably need to be here. But I'm here in representation of the whole group, and the job of the work that I'm going to present today is a part of my research, but of course I need all that help to develop all what I'm going to show you. So I should have a Roger Blowy's picture here, because I think that is responsible for that disease also in England at least. But it happens that I don't have a picture with him. I'll ask him probably in August. I want to see him in Bristol again. So, but at least I have Mortellaro here. In Europe, you have a Mortellaro disease, synonym of digital dermatitis or warts or strawberry disease, etc. So I bring him with me because if I have some questions about the origin, I ask him and he will know it, okay? I met him in New Zealand 2 years ago and it was very fun. I spent several days with him. And there are some Italians here, so that's for them too. Okay, when you go from that situation to a situation like this, environment obviously changes, but still you have, even in it doesn't work. Oh, here. Even in pasture, you have very hot spots, and if you go to California, they have the highest rates of digital dermatitis in summer because cows bunch around those places, although they are in dry lots. So let's forget about confinement and not confinement, because Neil Chesterton in New Zealand will agree with me that they have lots of digital dermatitis already, and they are the happiest cows in the world, or they were at some point. So we said that is in Wisconsin, but I hope there is nobody for California here. Okay, so we are dealing out of the hoof diseases, and this is, my work is all with lameness, but today we are going to just focus on infectious diseases, okay? And digital dermatitis is part of it. If you look at the official definition of digital dermatitis, it will give you that is epidermitis of the skin around the coronary vein. And I think that is great. It's a very nice definition. But lately we've seen that we will need some completion of that complementary information for that definition. Of course, it's a cause of lameness, but that's a strawberry look in a secondary infection with digital dermatitis over uncured problem of sole ulcer or white line disease. I don't know exactly where it is, because when I catch the cow, she already had the block from the trimmer. If you look at the skin here, this is also a digital dermatitis. It's treatable with oxytetracycline very nicely, very easy, but you need to recognize that this is also oxytetra. And linked with that, you have this hairy attack we call in America. You have here the name of non-healing, non-infectious disease. This is also digital dermatitis. It's not a new disease. It's something that happens in your farm because of a secondary infection with the same etiology. So we have a wide range of demonstrations of the same disease. In the States, if you look at bunch of dairies, you will probably find that at least one case is diagnosed in 70% of the dairy, where you have dairy cows, and in just exclusively for heifers, it's a little less, but it's the first case of the most important cause of lameness in heifers. So even it's a little bit lower, you have some. I don't have anything about England, but I know that it's high. So if you look at this, it's not at all complete, the list, but you see that, and the point with that slide is, you look that it's a very high prevalence, and there's some studies applying in wide range of money associated for a cow that has a digital dermatitis, how much money she's losing, and this stochastic model says 132. If you ask Chuck Gard, he's going to tell you $50. If you look in other places, it's more, but it's 1/3 or something like this in respect to a hoof disease, sole ulcer, white line, etc. But still, with that high prevalence, it's quite a bit of money that you can save if you don't have or eliminate or control the problem in your farm. So today we are going to be focused on that. She's asking me, you really know what you are doing? Well, first I know to know my enemy, and then tomorrow we are going to probably win the fight somehow. So first we will cover the etiology, and this is a very nice place. All of you know that chocolate. This is very infective. And if I need to give you like a sufficient cause for the disease, and I justify a little bit in a little bit why that's happening here. If you have moist somehow skin conditioning, and I don't care about what skin condition, it could be traumatic, it could be chemical, because it's in the back, and the cows in the back have quite a bit of chemicals, isn't it? And some microbial component. You have enough players to have a digital dermatitis. Also, in Richard Rowe is a leader or a pioneer in that, and the whole world is looking after that. There is also genetic factors probably involved that. We don't know much yet, but I will drop you a little comment towards the end. But that's our problem. Everybody identifies that. Painful lesion, not always demonstrating lameness, and when you score your cows, this is a little bit of drawback from this disease. It is not easily detectable sometimes, but it's a problem, super painful, and you know that. So if you look at, I don't know why it's not running, but that's a video, and I cannot make it work, so we'll pass it around. It's a video, but if you just do a fresh sample of one of your lesions and put it under a microscope, you will see them wiggle very, very easy. It's not that complicated to find them if you really take a biopsy from the disease. And this is the treponema is the bacteria that is involved on that. It's a spirochetal long form bacteria that in the live active form looks like this. And we recently identified that those, if you stress them enough, if you screw them enough with foot baths, etc., with chemicals, they will come to that form. You see this small one here? This is exactly one of the long ones when they are in active form. So those cystic forms, we don't know yet how to deal with them, but they are really, really important in the epidemiology of disease. So if I can make them die, but not enough that they can develop to this form, we don't know yet what is going to cause them to come back to the active form, but they are going to stay there for sure for your cows. So you are going to have a latent disease right there. And if I open your mind a little bit, and if you look at spirochetal diseases in humans, syphilis, yaws, even Lyme disease in humans, in dogs, all of them have cystic forms, and they have the same etiological component, that is a treponema. So it's not uncommon. I don't know why we didn't look for this before, because it's known in other very similar diseases, but it's in there, and very important for you. So keep in mind that for a little while. What allows me to talk to you so confident about that? Well, I spent quite a bit of dark nights in a lab trying to develop the disease artificially. So we put boots in cows with a plastic wrap inside. We go to a commercial farm, we take a sample of the biopsy, we put it against the skin, cover with a boot, fill twice with water. Here we go. We don't have enough warts in the field that I need to make new ones. But I know when they grow up, how big they are, everything. I can know everything about them. How many days it takes to develop, everything. So, and for that, I just need a biopsy, water, and some skin trauma that is caused indirectly by the boot and by the bandage. Not much, but just a little bit. So that's the new fashion in Paris. So if you have problems with lameness, just put boots in all of them. Don't do it. It's super tedious. But those are the lesions that we get with that infection model. Very similar. For us, it's much easier to develop them in the dew claws. For you, it's not that common because the claws are exposed to oxygen, etc. And this is an anaerobic component that for us is very easy because we bandage to the hock and we can recreate those. If I just use a pure culture of treponema, and that's quite relevant. That will be the next picture if that works. There we go. You cannot even see it's very pale, but you see that all the lesion goes around the leg. And this is with a pure culture. There's no other than treponema. And that was very good for us to see because we can target one microbe that even if it's not the most important bacteria in the disease, we can track him down and it will serve as a sentinel for everything we do from the bench to the farm. So even running new trials or etc. If we can have a sentinel for following up the evolution of the disease will be very good. So it looks like it's an incomplete disease. There is something else that is missing there, but the normal flora of your skin and the manure and etc. will develop to a full bloom disease. So very important finding. So if you remember, and if you don't remember, I will let you know. That's the surface. You get a transversal cut in your skin. You have a corneum stratum, and then the epidermis, and then the dermis, where you have some vascularization, etc. That's a normal view. So with valleys and mountains, it's normal what you see. If you have a very light infection from those infections that we recreate in the lab, and it's very light because we call it 1 in a scale from 1 to 4, you can see that all those bags here that you see is stained in black are bacteria in the surface. That was a very superficial one. If you find instead an active lesion, that the ones that you're going to find in your farm, and it is consistently in every lesion that we take a histology sample, you are going to see that some of the treponemes, and I can promise you, I don't know if you can see that they are spiral. They are the ones, the treponema, they are the ones that go very deep into the dermis. They will find here some kind of vascularization already. So they go very deep in the dermis, and that's very important for controlling it. Because imagine that if you put on top a layer of skin, because the cows kind of react against it, how the hell you are going to put an antibiotic or a hoof bath after a while if you don't cure them completely in the first treatment? That is going to come back and kill that friend here. Mostly, if you remember, they get into the cystic form. So the early treatment and the prevention is going to be the only way of taking care of your cows. I'm convinced that every farm can get rid of digital dermatitis. Patience, you need some patience in some cases. If you are totally screwed, you need some patience than the neighbor. But you can get rid of it, or at least have it controlled that you don't even worry about it. But you need to cover some conditions, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So in the past, we classified the disease as, okay, I have something or I have nothing. We did it in the past. Now we are a little bit better. At least in Wisconsin, the trimmers, normally they classify in 3 stages the disease. So if they have a little bit, they call it a D1, dermatitis 1. If they have a typical one, they call it D2. And if they have something else, they call it a D3. And they take decisions depending on that. okay? But let me show you what is the natural history of the disease. This is what's really happening. So when the disease starts with a small lesion. Look, this is a reference. This is 2 centimeters. So this is about 5 millimeters. And this is how the disease starts. You cannot see that. I get to see in the last year and a half, I've seen probably 4,000 legs. So I can find them because I don't care if they have or not. I just need to lift them up, and I found them, and I take pictures, which is very nice. But you are not going to find it in your farm. I mean, that will be covered with manure for you. And we call it an M1 state. Ooh. Oh, okay. This is the M2. If it's greater than 20 millimeters, we say, okay, we are good enough. Let's treat that cow because it's ready to go for treatment. After treatment, we call it an M3, and this is just a form, a transition form that means, you know, you were treated at some point, you have some black spot there because of the reaction to the treatment, but that doesn't last more than 8 days. It's just a transition. Don't matter too much to me. I need to review it because otherwise my boss will get mad at me. But this is where it starts to get interesting. Some cows that don't get cured completely, they get to that form, and you have those for sure. I'm pretty sure they have. And this is just a skin reaction all over the place. That is not active, there is no shedding of microorganisms, it's dormant or dead or whatever you want to call it, depending on what is underneath, but it's not too worrisome. Some of those, and this is where it gets really, you see the print here from an old lesion, so it's a chronic lesion. You said, okay, I'm done with her. If you look closely, and sometimes you see reaction, subclinical lesions that start on top of a chronic lesion. And this is exactly what you are trying to do with the foot baths. You are trying to prevent chronic lesions to go back again to the clinical stage, through a subclinical stage, or even preventing the M1s. So this is what's really happening. Sometimes it's not that straightforward to call it something. I choose the best pictures, but in this case I will call it an M2 because you have blood and ulceration, but look, that's a mess. It's the same farm. And you see that probably 4 centimeters proliferation there. It was chronic, it was active, it was chronic, it was active. That are the ones that mess your farm and make it impossible to heal that. That was neglected. So we decided to use the 5 system point for classifying the disease. If we want to really need to be precise, we need to do this to catch all cows where they really are, okay? I'm going to put you in a quick example. If you have this farm and you follow them every week, and this is theory, this is not true, this is just a simulation, and you have subclinical lesions that are starting to go up, what you are going to expect is the next month, some of those lesions that were very small develop to big lesions, and then you have a spike and an outbreak of digital dermatitis. Very understandable. If you use the classification, the traditional classification, you're going to find that, and you could have prevented here because you see an increase in subclinicals. You treat them more aggressively with a foot bath, you are done. You don't have the outbreak. Good. You are using the old classification. But what about this one? And what happens is nothing happens really, and then you have the outbreak. This is where your frustration and my frustration will come into place and say, you know what, suddenly by God, I have an outbreak of digital dermatitis. Well, if you have been using the system with 4, and if you agree with me, with these subclinicals that will start up, it will never start from new subclinicals. They are the cows that had a chronic that developed the subclinical lesion somehow, and then if you see this line going up, and the chronics that you thought that they were dormant are not this way, and then when you can explain. And that's simulation that I have a clinical trial that I cannot show you results yet, but it's exactly what happened, okay? So really, the chronics are a big deal, and they can develop to an outbreak, so bear that in mind. But there is more reasons for not wanting to have chronics. Look at this picture. This is a small lesion starting. You see that piece of skin here that it looks like something's going on. I'm pretty sure that underneath is full of treponema prepared to explode in an active lesion. It just happened that we catch her at the right time, just before that's happening. And maybe I will miss it. I trimmed for 8 years all my client cows, and for me that will be nothing. Now that I've seen the ones that we can explore in the experimental trial, I know that that's going to be a big full bloom lesion. So they have a process in place where the interdigital space is going to go up, deeper, etc. But let me explain you. So we thought, okay, let's see what happens when we have very small lesions. We all know that if you have a cow that is neglected with digital dermatitis, the heel is going to grow like this, it's going to be a square foot, and it's going to be lame. Everybody can identify those cows that looks like they walk on heels. But is it anything happening when they are like this, 2 centimeters only? Is there anything, because it will be very important for us if we find a reason to go quicker in the prevention and not letting them go until everybody can identify that cow. So we grabbed a bunch of the heifers, pre-calving, that we had in another study, but we use it for this one, and using this, this point system to classify them. So we had a group, like the 450 heifers, in one group all healthy, and it happens that over time some get DD, some didn't, and we have previous data, before and after data about hoof measurements, and we just look at the difference, what happens really in cows that get DD in terms of hoof conformation. So remember, and that's very important, the changes were not that big, but the lesions were not that big either. We are dealing with lesions that are very, very small. You probably will miss like 70% of those in your farm. Very easy, because they are covered with manure. Unless you are very picky, finding them is very difficult. So we measure a bunch of things that I'm going to show you slowly now. Not that slowly, but anyways. One of the things that we measure is total length, dorsal length, toe angle, everything in those 450 cows times 3 times, something like this. The depth of the interdigital cleft, the interdigital hygiene, we score it from 1 to 4. How much heel corrosion, that's a big deal, because it's a process that we know that can cause some locomotion problems, but it was never associated clearly with DD. We know that it's around at the same time, but what is the egg and which one is the chicken? Heel corrosion or DD. And the axial overgrowth, that's a big deal for a trimmer like me, because that will make me increase the number of sole ulcers if something happens in there. And for explaining to you what it is, this is a normal dorsal view of a plantar aspect from a foot. This is the medial toe, this is the lateral toe, and this is very typical for a freestyle. So the medial part of the lateral toe is overgrown, and that's exactly hitting the end of P3 where the deep flexor is inserted. Is where when you make that cow walk in concrete is where you get your sole ulcers. So I was interested in measuring that. We have a profile gauge that we can draw that shape and then take the measurements, and the way we'll do it, so we'll have this red line draw in a paper transferred from the cow. We draw a straight line where it should be the normal. If it goes up, it's good for us. So I will call it a positive measure. In this cow, it go down. I don't want it, so it's a negative measure of 7 millimeters. And I analyze that in some way. So we run a model, and you don't need even to read it. We control for the age, so to make sure that age is not influencing weight or height or days pregnant into those results. But we took time into account for knowing what is first, the egg or the chicken. Okay. In this, I'm going to show you a video I get with a 3D modeler to put all my data into a 3D model, because I have a 4-year-old and a 4 months, and I am always watching cartoons. So I said, well, let's keep watching cartoons. So I did a 3D model of the hoof with my results. But the result is going to be this way. So you're going to have something like this, and I will walk you through, but just for you to understand, because the video goes quite quickly. I know the stuff, so for me it's not. But for example, here, this is to your left of the dotted line. This is what happens in healthy cows. So for example, in relation to hill erosion, the healthy cows started with not much hill erosion, and over time they develop a little bit of the highest hill erosion that we can find in a cow, but not much. While the other ones, the ones that started pretty similar to the ones because they were all healthy at the beginning, once they get DD, they increased over time 40% of hill erosion. So it's really, what is really causing hill erosion, and it's a separate entity than digital dermatitis. Hill erosion is not digital dermatitis, but if you have digital dermatitis, it's going to increase a lot, in this case 40%, the cases of hill erosion. It is going to be much more severe. So we know now in which direction we need to move. So for example, if I want to quantify the effects of DD, economically I need to take into account a portion of the hill erosion to summarize in that, because it's part of the cause is DD in many cases. So that's the video. Richard, this is not running and it should. Can you click on the center of the picture? Oh, no. Click on here with the mouse. Nope. With the mouse. There we go. Can you do it? No. It was working yesterday, so. There we go. In the set. Okay, great. It's working? Oh, no, no. Very unfortunate. We tried yesterday. So can you go out of the presentation then and go all the way down? I have the slides as a backup, fortunately. Okay, it doesn't matter. Put it up again. You are not going to see my wonderful video of a hoof turning around and showing you what are the changes over time, unfortunately. And that was my star for today. Anyways, you keep going. Just there we go. I can summarize this in a table. Way more ugly than the video, okay? But I can tell you all the indicators, all the measures in the hoof, the toe angle, the heel height, the depth of the interdigital cleft. There is a big movement in the States thinking that we can select heifers, in this case heifers, with smaller interdigital cleft to start with, because they are going to be prone to develop less digital dermatitis. Okay, I turn the story around. It doesn't matter which are the cleft of your cow. It's when they get digital dermatitis that the cleft gets deeper. So don't worry much about cows having more or less cleft interdigital, because they are going to get digital dermatitis for other reasons. But once they get it, they're going to have a greater interdigital cleft, and that's going to help in the survival of the disease. So if you have a more depth interdigital cleft, what is going to happen is you're going to create a pocket of anaerobiosis, and the disease just loves that. That's why you get persistent digital dermatitis in your farm, because it increases the survival to herself. It's just increasing, for example, the toe angle and the heel height, everything is going to grow, and we knew it. If you have a very severe case of digital dermatitis, the heel height and the toe angle is going to be increased. But even in very small, so you are having changes at very early stages of the disease. If you want to have super healthy cows, you cannot even have a small case of digital dermatitis. So this is how bad it is. And we don't have I don't have a follow-up yet to show you how bad it is in the following months, because I didn't analyze the data yet, but I have it for you next year or whatever it happens. The interdigital hygiene is very important also. We are always grabbing the legs and say, you know, this leg is too dirty, it's going to have digital dermatitis, this leg is clean. Well, it's important as a management standpoint to evaluate the hygiene of the farm, but it's not that important to the survival of the disease. Once you have it, she will take care of increase the manure that is going to get accumulated in that spot for her to survive. So the idea has changed a little bit, okay? And of course, the hill erosion, I was cheating a little bit. The 42 that I showed you before, it was analysis of the data that I did until March. And this is a complete data set now with this table that I was not planning to show you, but it's a little bit, even a little bit more, 50% increase. Okay? So, yeah. Oh, no. Otherwise, I will go till tomorrow. Yeah, I know Americans also are very pleasant always. Okay, so we increase hill erosion, the conformation changes, and plan on prevention, because it's the only solution you have. Okay, and the last thing, because it's about time.
No, you've got time to video.
Oh, okay. Well, let me finish this, and then if I have time for the video, we'll see. Okay. The immune response. This is another part of what I was interested in because I have this group of heifers. Well, let's look what happened immunologically. We always had cross-sectional pictures. Just we go to the farm, we take samples, we elaborate them, and then we look at what happens with some immunitary response. But we never know, did it happen before? Did it happen after? Are the treponema antibodies going down? Is a vaccine, has some horizon for a vaccine? Something like this. We need to know that and how the cow responds to it. There is two views from that. One is from the practical standpoint. Can I use some other methods to detect digital dermatitis in new cows? If I'm not experienced enough, I don't know how to identify M1s, M2s, M3s. Is there another method, objective method, that will give me a clue if the new batch of cows that I'm bringing from Indiana, they're going to have some digital dermatitis to my farm? I was so happy with my cows, I introduced a new group, bang, I have an outbreak. Well, that was the intention or the objective of that. So we look, we run an ELISA we made in the lab, so it's not available yet, but it's handy for us to have it. And we have a cohort just for you now. It's just 100 heifers that I follow up over time through those evaluations that I showed you before. And what happened is I center, the 0 is the day that I identified the digital dermatitis case, the active case. So all of them that I'm going to show you had a case of digital dermatitis. And all of those are the samples, very summarized here, are the samples that I took from them. In the y-axis, this is the titers of antibody that I measure with the ELISA. And if you look before having the first case, it's really flat. We have a stable repetition of in certain range of very low values. This is a negative, and some in here will say you cannot have negative antibodies. Well, this is a log scale, and I didn't even put it here because it's not that important. What is important is, well, we have a stable number before they get sick, very low. As soon as they have the first digital dermatitis, and those are, I have there the type 2, and let me give you a hint of that. We classify or type the cows in type 1s, the ones that never had ADD. Type 2 is the ones that had one case, we treat her and never more, another case with at least a follow-up of 2 months. And then type 3 is the ones that, they are the ones that mess your farm, that you treat her and come back again in a month, and she had another DD, you treat her again and again and again, and you get bored for that cow, and this cow is the one that is spreading all around, okay? So those are just, this is just a plot of the twos, of the number twos. They had one case and then they never had it before. So it makes sense to me. Very flat, very low values at the beginning. They had an M2, they jump in 50%. So once we run the models, I'm not going to show you, but the increase is a 50% in antibody titers, like when you have flu or any other infectious disease. And then over time, they fade out by about 200 days, they come back to normal levels. If you look from the laboratory standpoint, that will be an approximation of what a vaccine will do in terms of stimulating immunity. You have cows vaccinated against respiratory diseases, etc., and they tell you, okay, booster your cows every 6 months. Well, for digital dermatitis, you will probably need, so far in with that data, which is probably, it could be totally odd, but is what I found, like 200 days of repetition or something. It will be similar to an E. coli vaccine or something. But nothing about vaccines, it's just a curiosity of how to interpret those graphs. So they fade out over time. You didn't have any more diseases or disease all over the time, so that's fine. What happens in the cows type 3? This is a typo there. So it should be type 3. The ones that repeatedly have cases, they never go down. So you have this consistent high immune response because you have repeated boosting of the immunity with infection. Okay? So far, so good. If you remember a little bit, when I show you those clinical cases that have, those DD cases that have a definition of M1, very small ones, or the ones that were chronic, and they had an M1 inside of a chronic lesion, so they were relapsing somehow, we can see it visually. I can lift up a foot and say, here is starting again. Okay, but look at what happens at immunitary level. So the response of the cow. The type 3s, they are going to stay up, going up because they have repeated cases. The type 2s that had a chronic disease and they never develop again, they go down. But the ones that have a subclinical lesion, and I can tell you that that's true also for subclinicals for the first time, they don't respond, the cow is not responding to her at immunitary level. So it's like the cow will be able to hide very small lesions from you and from her. So you are not going to see it, but the immunitary level is not going to see it either. So in terms of management, that is very cumbersome because you are not going to have alerts of what you are going to find, although you are having already an outbreak future in 15 days, okay? So very, very important, and I love that happened because I have something nice to say, okay? So we cover all that, and if I may do a summary that today I'm going to explain more in more extent because it's not that simple as this is, but tomorrow I have the shopping list for you to do when you go to a problem, investigate a problem, and we had a very nice discussion today in the farm, at least for me. For some, probably not, but for me, I enjoy it. So you have 2 points that you need to think about. The acutes and the chronics that they are going to be able to develop to acutes again. If you go to the number 1 with the acutes, the only thing that you need to, and this is exclusively, and it's yes or yes, you need to treat early. The only thing of curing them completely is with early treatment. You identify them proactive, you look after them, and then once you find them, you treat them, because otherwise you need to remember that they're going to be if you are based only on foot baths for treating acute lesions, you are going to be killing only half of the disease. The cow is going to react, and they are going to go to encysted forms, if you remember those cystic forms, and then at some point they are going to come back to you. You are not going to get rid of it. While with the treatments, most of the times, you can get a nice complete cure, I believe. I know that some of the cows that I treat in my trial, I have I think that 75 to 85 success rate. So mostly all the cows that I treat get healed up because I go very early. So that can happen, not in every case, but it can happen. But not with foot baths. You are not using foot baths for treating those, okay? And it took me a while to get around my head of that. You are using foot baths to prevent chronics to develop to an M2 or subclinicas to develop to an M2. This is for what you use foot baths. When you identify that, you know that you need active work to find those. And if you really want to get rid of the disease in your farm. And the foot bath needs to work enough to not have those. And that will give us clues to how to control the disease also, because if I can monitor how many of those I have, I can going up and lower the frequency of my hoof bathing or the concentration and everything. So we have a tool. We can use that information to manage my foot bath program and also costs, okay? And get rid of the disease. If not, you are never gonna get rid of it. Yep, I'm finishing with that. So thank you for keeping awake. I think that I shout several times on purpose just for awake some of you. And tomorrow we are gonna go through the shopping list that you need, probably way more interesting than today. So if you have any questions, just let me know. If not, I'm good.